Welcome to Sabby Sabs podcast. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. My special guest today is Cenk Uygur. He is the founder of the Young Turks. Cenk, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So I have quite a number of questions for you. First and foremost, obviously, a lot of people, I think, were disappointed after the 2024 presidential election results. You made a statement that you thought that now was the time to maybe try to have a coalition with MAGA on these issues where we do agree. And I want you to talk a little bit about that. And the other part of that question that I have is, do you feel differently now that Donald Trump has been in office for at least 3 months, and why or why not?
Yeah, all great questions. So first off, I worked so hard to make sure that Donald Trump didn't win. And we did this Trump madness thing, the 64 worst things he's ever done. I did half a dozen debates against conservatives, might have been actually close to a dozen on our air. I went on their air. I tried to convince anybody and everybody did. Not necessarily to vote for the Democrats, who are not very inspiring, but to vote against Donald Trump. Why? Because, and the case I made for them was, look, the guy doesn't respect our form of government. He just doesn't. I'm not worried about, hey, a Republican wins and we're going to get different immigration policies, different economic policies. I don't agree with those policies, but we'll live to fight another day. With Trump, I was worried that we couldn't live to fight another day. I think the 2028 election is going to be the most important election of our lifetimes. And people say that about every election, but I believe it. I think it's going to be an absolutely pivotal turning point. And I wanted to get to that pivotal turning point. I want to get to 2028. And so why did I think so negatively of Trump? Because he lost the election and didn't leave, and he came up with a fake elector plot, which we talked about a million times on the Young Turks, right? And so that is a real attempt at a coup in America. So that guy doesn't respect democracy or the Constitution. And then afterwards, he said, after he lost, that we should terminate the Constitution. A lot of the right wing had never even seen that quote. And so, and I could go on and on, right? So is Trump what we expected? Yeah. And so I get why a lot of Democrats are confused, because I was trying to push Biden out, and we've been trained as Democrats and on the left by MSNBC and other folks that if you're against Trump, then you have to say the most wonderful things about the Democratic candidate, and it doesn't matter. They could literally be falling apart at the seams like Joe Biden, but if you just prop them up enough and you do enough marketing and propaganda, our guys will win, right? So don't ever point out if they've got problems. But in this case, he couldn't speak. Our candidate couldn't talk. And you saw it at the debate, and all of the smart political professionals finally saw what I was talking about, not at the debate, but when Joe Biden refused to do the Super Bowl interview, right? That's when he lost Nate Silver and Ezra Klein and David Axelrod and Carville, because they know that if you can't do the Super Bowl interview, the softest interview and the one that has the biggest reach, that means you're not even running a campaign. So I was attacking Biden not because I'm against the Democratic Party, but because I wanted the Democratic Party to win by having a stronger candidate. So now once we lose, not only did we lose, unfortunately, as I said, we should have had an open convention. We should have had the strongest possible candidate. Instead, we always anoint, and then they anointed Kamala Harris, basically. And so we lost not only all 7 swing states, but we lost the popular vote. So now, having talked to a lot of these right-wingers in those debates and appearances, et cetera, I began to see something a little bit different than I expected. Well, in the past, when I talked to right-wingers on Fox News or anywhere else, they're just talking point machines, right? And so, tax cuts for the rich are great for the average guy. Helping giant corporations are great for small business. Whatever Mitch McConnell and, Heritage Foundation cooked up, they would just regurgitate, right? So now when I talk to them, that was still 70% of what folks are doing. But 30% was very different. Very, very anti-war, when before the Republican Party was very pro-war, right? Whether they mean it or not is really great and important open question. So, without getting into all of the details on all the policies, what I did after the election was, guys, if they're really anti-war, we need to build a coalition with them if Trump, for example, tries to attack Iran. And I know that Trump is going to be pushed to attack Iran because his largest donor is Miriam Adelson, and she wants us to attack Iran. She's a hard right-wing Israeli American, but she seems to, in her donations and in her demands, care more about Israel. That's not true of normal Israeli Americans, or certainly not true of Jewish Americans, but it is true of her, right? And so I know, watch out, they're going to want to attack Iran. So if I can, and if all the left does is go, oh, we hate what Trump is doing, it doesn't move him an inch, not 1 inch. In fact, it might help him because he's like, look, we're owning the libs. If, on the other hand, he loses his base or a significant percentage of his voters, then he gets worried. So, for example, he said, we're going to take control of Gaza in the first meeting with Netanyahu, and we're going to do the unexploded bombs and clean that up for Israel, et cetera. And it looked like he was saying ground troops in Gaza. And he turned around on that in 24 hours. Why? Because his base revolted, not because the left revolted. Again, that doesn't move him at all, right? So his base was like, no, we're not doing ground troops in Gaza. I don't know what you're talking about, right? So he goes, no, I didn't mean that, right? But here come the donor class again. So Netanyahu shows up a little while ago, and they're back to talking about how we're going to control and own Gaza, right? So you've got to build that coalition to be able to effectively push back on that, to make sure that we don't get hurt more by the Trump administration, and to kind of open up their eyes to things that are happening, right? So when you only watch Fox News and you never watch any left-wing programming, we can't say to them, hey guys, remember how you were anti-war and you wanted to cut the Pentagon budget? You see how they actually added to the Pentagon budget? Because they were never going to hear you. But now if you go on Patrick Bet-David and Tim Pool and all these other different right-wing shows and independent shows, et cetera, and you go, hey guys, let's cut defense. And they go, yeah, let's cut defense, which, by the way, they did. You can see videos from Patrick Bet-David, Tim Pool, and the other shows that I was on where they're like, you're right, we should cut defense. And then Patrick Bet-David, after I did that appearance, did this long video about how you could cut defense. And then now all of a sudden it goes to Laura Ingraham and it's on Fox News, et cetera. That doesn't mean that I think that they're actually going to cut defense. So when they actually added over $100 billion to defense, you could begin to see some portion of his voters on social media going, what just happened? I thought we were cutting it. Why are we adding to it, right? So is that most of his voters? No. Is that some of his voters? Definitely. Is that the sum that we need to switch over to vote on our side, or to just support us on those policies we agree on and to potentially move Trump? Yes. So that's a way of a strategic way of trying to regain the middle. So there's a lot more nuance to it, but I've got a long explanation here, so I'll stop there.
So I'm glad you mentioned anti-war because I want to tell you what happened a couple years ago. I went to DC to cover a rally called the Rage Against the War Machine rally, and there were people there from different political ideologies. And I remember covering that, thinking to myself, looking around like, wow, look at all these people came together because they agree on this issue. There were people that were speaking there like Tulsi Gabbard, Dennis Kucinich, Jill Stein was one of the speakers. And I was like, wow, this is something. But then October 7th happened. And after October 7th, when Donald Trump started to smear Palestinians, I watched some of those same people make excuses for Donald Trump. And then all of a sudden, that so-called anti-war coalition that I believed we had at that point in time, it was gone, because as we got into the electoral season, people went back into their political silos and started to defend their candidate. So the problem that I've noticed with this particular type of coalition building, and I'm a registered independent, by the way, is that once there is an election that is involved, people tend to side with their candidate, even when they're wrong. Now, to be fair, some of them have told me they do not appreciate what Trump is doing when it comes to Iran, when it comes to Gaza, but they don't regret. They're not at the point where they regret their vote. But I think that's where the coalition, to me, it falls apart, because I see people still find ways to defend Donald Trump, just like I saw people try to find ways to defend Kamala Harris. So that's where I've seen it fall apart. And I felt like the anti-war part was a piece where you could get more people to come together. Same thing with healthcare. I had this conversation recently with Shermichael Singleton. He's conservative. Sure, Michael Singleton agreed with me on this show that the healthcare system we have in this country is a problem. However, he went on to say he doesn't think universal healthcare is going to be the answer. He doesn't agree with that. So I don't see them moving over to progressive positions. That's my thing.
Yeah, Sabby, I actually totally agree with you, and and I get what you're saying, but I want you to have a bigger picture context. So what you did in that conversation about healthcare, and what I'm trying to do in all the conversations I'm having, is the very beginning of this, right? So for years and maybe decades, we've just been yelling at each other, right? And by the way, I'm totally guilty of that. I mean, I'm so I do tend to yell from time to time on air, right, and online. So it's not like I didn't do it. I definitely did, right? And so and that worked to win over the middle for some period of time. But now that's not working at all in terms of winning over the middle. And these conversations are. But Trump, we're 3 months into his term. If anyone thought like, oh, magically, some percentage of Trump's voters, let alone all of his voters, but like a big chunk, 20, 30%, overnight are going to be like, oh, I was such an idiot for voting for Trump. No way. I'm now for universal health care. I'm for anti-war. I don't want the rich getting taxes. I don't want this, blah, 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 blah. Come on. Of course, that's not going to happen in this tiny period of time. Sabby, what you and I have to do, what so many other people have to do, and what you're already doing, is continue to have those conversations and to actually engage in, yeah, I know it sounds cliched and people think it's not real, but I think it is real, especially online now. And it's not a perfect system at all, but there is an actual marketplace of ideas. And so if you don't engage in that marketplace, you're never going to win eventually, right? But if we engage today and we keep making our case, by the time 2028 rolls around, yes, we can win a certain percentage of those folks. And for the ones that did vote for Trump that are either independents or right wing, what I would say to them is, guys, we're not trying to trick you. We're trying to show you that they've been trying to trick you. So if they actually cut the Pentagon, great. Then you got what you wanted, right? If they don't attack Iran, great, right? If they actually deliver for the average man, great, no problem. Then you were right and we were wrong, right? But what I'm trying to lay out to them, and it sounds like you're doing something similar in some ways, is that, but when they don't deliver for you, remember what we told you, right? Remember that we were both anti-war. We both wanted better health care. We both wanted better wages. So they said, give it to the rich, et cetera, and that didn't work, did it, right? So why don't you try the populist left that actually in some issues has the same goal as you, but actually will deliver for the average guy instead of for Donald Trump and his billionaire buddies. You see what I'm saying?
But what about when it comes to some of the social issues? For example, Charlie Kirk, and he's not the only one, but he's the easiest one for me to call out at this point in time. Charlie Kirk has been smearing MLK of all people. Charlie Kirk said that he wouldn't feel comfortable with a Black female pilot. So when we talk about building coalitions, we also do have to remember that those spaces need to be comfortable spaces for people that are from marginalized communities as well. And I personally would not feel comfortable building a coalition with someone out there smearing MLK and saying all these things about Black people, all these negative things about Black people. So I think that's where a lot of the pushback comes from, Cenk. I think that's why some people are saying, what is Cenk Uygur thinking about? There's no way I'm going to try to organize with this person. They don't even respect me as an individual. I mean, what do you say to that? Like, how do you expect marginalized people to feel?
Yeah. So I think the word you use there is critical, which is comfortable, right? They're uncomfortable in those spaces. Okay. No problem. I get that. And it's not for everybody. Then let me do it. But please try not to tear me down while I'm doing the uncomfortable thing that I think might help. Right. So let me give you an example from my background so you know what I'm talking about. So if I go on Steve Bannon's show and let's say that we agree on private equity companies shouldn't be able to buy our homes because it drives up housing prices. They're going to turn us all into renters eventually. And we're going to be indentured servants of the corporate class. Right. And if it turns out Bannon agrees with that, I am not sure that he does, but he might. And Charlie Kirk says that he agrees with that and has pushed it on his show. But I know Steve Bannon is viciously against immigrants, and I'm an immigrant. And in the past, he's been viciously anti-Muslim, and I'm Muslim, right? Muslim background. So if somebody else who's in the same category as I am, immigrant Muslim, says, I don't want to talk to Steve Bannon, that makes me uncomfortable. And I don't want to be in a coalition with him. I think he's really a harmful person, a terrible person, etc. Okay, no, I'm not going to push you to do that. God bless. I totally get it, right? But if I can get that thing done, whatever it might be that's positive, anti-war, protecting housing prices, paid family leave, which a lot of the right wing wants. 74% of the right wing want paid family leave because they think it helps moms and actually incentivizes children, etc. So if we can get that done, that matters. It matters to people's lives. You either get the paid family leave or you don't. Your housing prices actually go up or they don't, right? So I'm willing to put aside how much I can't stand Steve Bannon's opinions on Muslims, on immigrants, and by the way, on other issues, including Trump should run for a third term. It's maniacal. It's unconstitutional. I'm willing to get into the most, knock out, drag out, whatever fight there is on those grounds. But if we can build a coalition to prevent an attack on Iran, like, for example, Tucker Carlson, loathsome in 1,000 ways, right? And is against my identity and my beliefs in 1,000 ways. But he really doesn't want to attack Iran. If you say, I'm going to turn down that coalition, I'm going to say, no, you don't listen to Tucker Carlson. We should attack Iran because Tucker doesn't want to. No, don't do that. Don't do that. Because it matters. Like attacking or not attacking Iran matters. So I'm willing to put aside how uncomfortable I am and how much I disagree with them on those other issues to be able to potentially one day build a coalition that could actually prevent these things, right? So again, the skeptics will always find a reason to be a skeptic. So they'll say, no, I don't believe Tucker. I don't believe. And by the way, Tucker Carlson and Steve Bannon give you a million reasons not to believe them, right? But no, Tucker's like very adamantly against that Iran war. If you say no, everything he says is a lie, okay, then is it a lie when he says that he hates immigrants? That doesn't seem like it's a lie, right? Like, so he's trying to appeal to his audience, and he thinks his audience doesn't want to attack Iran. So take the win on that category. And if you're not comfortable doing it, that's okay. Let me do it. But please try to not hurt that effort so we can actually get the policies we agree on.
So people are saying that TYT has changed. I mean, when I first started watching TYT, it was the home of progressives. I understand some of this. Some people believe that this is a business decision that you have made because I think we both know that there is more leverage, and YouTube highly promotes right-wing commentary over left commentary. Some people have that opinion. One of the things that I said is that it sounds like to me that Cenk and Anna have decided that they need to try to get some type of a win, because it's been almost 10 years now since the first Bernie Sanders presidential campaign. But a number of things have happened. I want to give you a chance to respond to this. Some of the co-hosts or contributors of TYT have left TYT. I know that Francesca recently was fired. And I'm noticing a little bit of a pattern. This is something similar to what I saw with the Hill Rising, where Kim Iverson was there. Well, first Crystal and Sagar left, then Ryan Grimm came, then Kim Iverson came, Brianna Joy Gray came, Katie Halper was a contributor, and all of them are gone, right? They didn't want Kim there because of the pandemic conversation with Fauci. They didn't want Katie Halper there because of her commentary on Israel. Brianna Joy Gray got fired because of Israel. And now I look at Rising today and I'm like, wow, they really got rid of a lot of the good talent. What is happening there with TYT? Has TYT changed its values?
No, not at all. So there's a number of things in there that I don't think are quite right in the assumptions that you put in there. So let me address it one by one. First of all, I get why people think, hey, are you guys doing it is there a right-wing turn, and is it for financial reasons? Well, and why do people think that? Because other people have done it, and then they've gotten rewarded, like Dave Rubin, with tons of money showered from the right wing, etc. But except in our case, That's not true at all because A, we haven't made the right wing turn. So there's nothing to shower, right? So like if you watch our videos or our live show, which by the way, every day, Monday through Friday, 6 to 8 o'clock, you can see it with your own eyes. And if you see us being like right wing, you could be like, aha, I knew it. There it is, right? They're telling me how wonderful Donald Trump is on tax cuts for the rich or whatever lunatic thing he came up with yesterday, right? Or if you see it and you go, wait a minute, these guys are saying the same thing they said before. Anyway, you'll get to see it with your own eyes. It's on every day on YouTube at 6 o'clock Eastern, right? And so that's not true. And then in terms of did we do it for attention or money, etc.? No, and we knew this because we're professionals. We know the algorithms, right? So no, we knew that it might hurt us, and it did. On the main channel, our views are way down, and so our opponents can celebrate that. Woohoo! Yay! We got them, etc. And so, but you can't say, "Hey, we got them," and they've lost a lot of money here, and they did it for the money. Those two things are not consistent. They just aren't. So pick one, okay? But you can't have both. So there's no extra money at all, and there is no right-wing shift. At the same time, and by the way, let me, and so I'll get to what I think people think are the shift in a second. But in terms of what you said about YouTube favors right-wing content and stuff, it doesn't. In my opinion, it rewards, we know this, like anybody on YouTube knows this, it rewards quote unquote consistency, right? And what consistency means is just give them what they want and don't give them anything else. And what I have a different word for that is called extremism, right? So our side says, okay, never give an inch, because the algorithm rewards consistency / extremism, right? So we're right about everything, and whatever is the outer edge of the left or the right, and it applies equally to both sides, right? Give them the outer edge, because that's what people want. And if anybody varies from that, attack, right? The others do. And so if you're not perfectly consistent, you'll get hurt. But we took that risk anyway. And so I'll get to what does it mean to not be consistent in what we were doing before in a second. But you see channels that go, yeah, the Democrats are great. They're the greatest thing ever. Donald Trump's the most evil thing, et cetera, et cetera. Those are actually now getting massive views, massive. That's actually going for the money. That no nuance, no nothing. I don't care about policy. Rah Democrats, no matter how corporate they are, no matter how much they never deliver for you, those folks don't care about policy. They care about how do I get views and how do I get money, right? So, and look, I'm not hating. Everybody's doing their own thing. And the same is true of the radical right. They've actually been doing it longer, in a sense, on YouTube. That's why it appears that there's all these big shows that are on the right wing, but they're consistently going more and more radical, and their algorithm is rewarding them. So it's rewarding radicalism on both sides. And it's not rewarding any moderation at all. So what is the change that people are talking about? So in the past, as I said earlier, Sabby, I did a lot of yelling at the right wing, right? And so I've done that a billion times. What is different now is something that's an actual realization. It's important to our political strategy. It's important for us in order to win, to actually effectuate these policies. But it's also just true, right? What I realized, especially when I went on the right-wing shows and started interacting with the right wing more, is this is not the same audience as before. Before, I would get nothing but talking points. Now these guys are giving me 70% talking points, but 30% they're all over the board in a way that I didn't expect and never saw before. So I try to figure out what's going on. Why is this happening? And what I realize is they're not just watching Fox News anymore. They're watching Rogan and Theo Von, even though he's not that political, and Tim Pool, and all these different outlets, right? And all those outlets have slightly different points of view on different topics. Some, for example, are in the old school of right wing. Let's do whatever Israel wants. Let's attack Iran. Let's start more wars. Let's give endless money to Israel. Others are in the camp of, no, I'm not interested in giving any more money to Israel. And I'm definitely not interested in fighting their wars for them. So hence, now I'm starting to see, okay, wait, it's the media that's driving their opinions. Whatever media they're watching, is what's driving their opinions, which makes sense, right? And now they have more diverse media, and you might disagree with a lot of what's in that media, or certainly the great majority of it, but at least it's a little bit different, right? So what I took away from that is, and there's one other factor, which is the Democratic side, which I'll get to in a second. Oh, wait a minute. These folks, and we partly already knew this, but it really reinforced it for me. These folks, they got lied to. They genuinely believe that Trump is anti-war. They genuinely believe that Trump is populist. It's not like they're thinking, we'll trick the liberals and, we'll pretend to be anti-war, and we'll pretend to be for the average American. And then when Trump gets in, we'll serve the rich and we'll start endless wars. Some of them might think that, but I don't think that's a large number. I think a lot of them really believe that Trump was going to do those things. But he's not going to. You and I know he's not going to do those things, right? On war, again, his base might push him in a certain direction. So then I realized it's not the voters' fault. It's the leaders' fault. So then you look at the Democratic side. And so many people believe that Joe Biden was young and dynamic on our side. And they would get really upset if you said that he wasn't and he was in mental decline. They'd get super mad at you, but not just mad at you. They really believed it with all their hearts, that Joe Biden had no mental decline issues at all. He's the best candidate we could have against Trump. Now, is that because they're bad people? No, of course not, right? They got lied to by MSNBC and the others that told them that Biden was young and dynamic, and they believed it. So the conclusion I came away from is, don't blame the voters. Attack the powerful, attack the institutions and the elites in the cases that you need to, but don't blame the voters. Try to win over the voters. The voters, and Sabby, there's a reason why things are called a wedge issue, right? Because they try to drive a wedge between us. And why do they do that? They want us fighting on those wedge issues so we don't unite on taxes and war and all these things that the great majority of Americans actually agree with. So that's the sense that people have that we've quote unquote changed, is that sense of, I'm not yelling at the Trump voters anymore. I'm yelling at Trump. And I'm telling the Trump voters, remember, guys, here's the things we agree on. Here's the things we disagree on. And on the things we agree on, now you're seeing with your own eyes, he's not delivering. Okay. You see what I'm saying?
I understand that. I think that there's a lot of frustration right now. I was just at Harvard Law School, and I can tell you the students are very down. They said the Democratic Party isn't fighting. They said both parties are owned by Wall Street. They said, what's the point when you can just buy elections? Very down, very disappointed. And that brings me to the Democratic Party. I personally, because of the big money interest, I don't believe the Democratic Party can change. I supported Bernie twice, both times. I supported the squad. They let me down tremendously when it came to certain pieces of legislation that they either supported or they should have supported and they did not. I'm very upset with the fact that Bernie Sanders still won't call what's happening in Gaza a genocide. I was upset with AOC saying that Kamala Harris is working tirelessly for a ceasefire. There are a number of issues. I know you said you wanted to build a coalition with people on the right that agree with you on certain issues, but I have to ask, it seems like you're not willing to build a coalition with people to your left, right? So I think I'm to your left, meaning that I support some things that I know you don't support. Like I support defunding the police. I know you don't support that, but why not build a coalition with those people? Because what I think, because I don't believe that the Democratic Party is going to change because of the big money interests, I really think we should be using this time to try to build up the Green Party or a third party. Chris Smalls is starting a Labor Party. Chris Smalls is traveling across the country, engaging with people about how we can have a general strike in this country. I think that's where the energy should be going. And I really thought that, especially with the genocide, that more people would see this like, oh my God, both these parties are warmongers. Both of these parties are owned. And I want to get your perception about that, because the Democratic Party has let a lot of us down. And I'm curious what you think about building that coalition with people to the left of you and the third party movement.
Yeah. So that's another great question. And I think there's two different issues in there. So one is building coalition with the left, and the other is a third party, right? And so is that the right way to build a coalition, right? So do I want to build a coalition with the left? Of course, I am the left, right? I don't mean I'm exclusively the left. I mean that if you watch our show on any given day, you'll see it's totally on the left, right? And so I know for some that say, nah, it's not enough. It's not enough. You have to agree with me 100%. So, for example, you and I apparently don't agree on the framing of defund the police. I think it's terrible framing. I think police reform is desperately needed, but you're less likely to get police reform if you call it defund the police. So we can get into that debate. But do I want you and I to vote together in an election? Absolutely, of course, right? So let's say you had found a great candidate and you guys are pushing it forward and they've got a great chance of winning, etc. Am I not going to support that candidate because they want to defund the police or they have some positions I don't agree with? No. I'm going to support the candidate that most agrees with my positions. That's the logical thing to do. So, in fact, I'd be a giant hypocrite if I said, hey, guys, I'm allowed to disagree with you 5 or 10%. And you don't have to, go to war over that. If it didn't apply to me as well, of course it applies to me as well. If I disagree with a candidate that's 5 to 10% more on the left than I am, so what? I'm going to agree with that person a lot more than I agree with the guy on the right who I don't agree with on the issues 90% on, right? So, of course, build coalitions on the left. And my God, wherever we are on the left-wing spectrum on policy, when the Democratic primary comes in 2028, we must get on the same team. We cannot pick an establishment Democrat, a corporate Democrat. We can't. And what I'm a little worried about, Sabby, is that some portions of the folks that are, and this is important to clarify before we go further. My audience, we do this great town hall on Operation Hope that we do, and they asked me similar questions, and I answered it. If you're a member on tyt.com, you can see that for yourself. But what we realized in that conversation, what I realized thanks to my audience, is that saying far left, max left, all these different words that I've tried, and every time I said, look, I don't know what to call these folks. It's actually not based on policy. So it's not about whether you're far or et cetera. I'm far left on gun control and on a bunch of issues, right? Probably to the left of you and probably to the left of the great majority of the Democratic voters, right? That's not the right way to think about it. Are you a radical or are you not a radical? What does it mean to be a radical? Radical is purity test. You must agree 100%. If you don't, you get thrown overboard, right? You must hate the other side. If you don't hate the other side, you get thrown overboard. No dissent is allowed. Otherwise, you get thrown overboard. Radical right does purity tests based on race, religion, ethnicity, etc., and ideology. The left mainly does it on ideology, which is better because at least you're not doing race and religion, etc. But it's still a purity test, and it's still the kind of radicalism that I'm against. I'm against all fundamentalism, religious fundamentalism, and political fundamentalism. That doesn't mean that everyone on the left is politically fundamentalist or radical. Not at all. I think it's a small group. So, but I'm saying don't be radical. I'm saying build the coalitions that are winning coalitions. So I can get to the Green Party in a second, but I thought you wanted to jump in on something.
But okay, so Cenk, you told people to support Kamala Harris, though. She was a corporate candidate. So this is what I'm saying. This is what we saw happen twice. Bernie Sanders was the progressive candidate, taking small dollar donations. But when Bernie is not able to get the DNC nomination, we can go into how the Democratic Party cheated Bernie Sanders, I would say twice. The response from most of progressive media was, well, you can't get Trump, so you got to support the nominee. You got to support Biden. You got to support Hillary. So the thing is, the reason why I think some of us left the Democratic Party after this whole, I would call it progressive experiment, is because we saw that continuously happening. Don't support people who take corporate money, but the DNC controls who the nominee is going to be. And they're going to go with someone who's corporate. Then we hear you guys say, well, just support that corporate Democrat. So are you saying going forward, you're not going to do that?
So there's a super important distinction there. Support in the primary or the general election, right? Because in the general election, there was no earthly way that any candidate other than Kamala Harris or Donald Trump was going to win by the time we get to decision time and we're voting, right? So and I didn't want Donald Trump winning because I thought he might terminate the Constitution and doesn't believe in our form of government. I didn't want that under any circumstances. So then I was left choiceless but to vote for Kamala Harris. So, but in the primaries, no, do not coalesce around corporate candidates. That is a giant trick. It's a propaganda trick by mainstream media. So that's what happened against Bernie in 2016 and 2020. I've been dead set against that. So your point is, why not just go independent? Why not just get rid of these? Can't stand these. If you can't stand these corporate Democrats, I've been fighting these corporate Democrats my whole life, right? So when you tell me about how you go to Harvard and everybody hates money in politics, oh, thank God, finally, thank God, right? And by the way, again, I know some on the left won't believe this, but the thing that the right-wing actual voters now hate the most is money in politics. And you're going to say, well, no, but they love Elon and they love this and that. Yeah, I get it. And Elon set up a giant propaganda machine on X. But whenever I go on any right-wing show and I go, the donor class sucks and they control all of our politicians. AIPAC does, the drug companies do, the oil companies do, etc. All I get is, yep, 100%. Then I say, remember, Elon's a donor. They're like, but okay, I hear you. So at least we planted that thought. But anyway, my point is, we're getting to this wonderful place. But unfortunately, our system is so rigged against third parties that it is just, unless you're a billionaire, it's near impossible to pull off a third-party victory. But what I would tell you, Sabby, is, on the other hand, winning a Democratic primary, it's been so frustrating in these last 3 cycles. But is it impossible? It's not even close to impossible. Bernie almost did it twice. And in fact, Bernie could have done it if he was just a little different. He's too nice. If he had actually made an aggressive case against Hillary Clinton or Joe Biden, I think he would have won those primaries. But he just refuses to attack any other Democrat. And as much as I love Bernie, it's so frustrating that he thinks that those corporate Democrats are his colleagues. They're not his colleagues, they're his opponents. And they're his most effective opponents. But look at what Trump did to the Republican Party. He snuck in as a celebrity candidate, said the things that were super popular for that side, by the way, one of which was drain the swamp, anti-corruption. I know he didn't mean any of it, and he never did any of it, right? But that was an effective campaign strategy. So he wins over the Republican primary, and then he bullies the establishment Republicans. Now, in his case, he did it just for himself, right? But if we had a progressive populist candidate that wins a Democratic primary, which is enormously possible in 2028, right? That candidate would get to remake the whole party. So then we don't have to be a billionaire to take over a party. We just do it in the primary. So please stay with me in 2028 and do not vote for, and Sabby, one of the things I'm worried about for folks that don't agree with me on the left is, oh no, culture wars are the most important thing. So if Kamala Harris is a black woman, then that's it. I'm voting for her and I'm voting against the progressive because I'm doing culture wars. No, don't do that. You see what I'm saying?
Well, you're not going to find that on this show. I think we were very critical of that. But I do want to bring up this issue as well. I did speak to a number of Black Americans prior to the election. I did roundtables in person as well. And then, of course, post-election. And I did try to sound the alarm to people that I think a lot of Black Americans are going to stay home. They're going to sit this election out. And I was right. Kamala Harris did lose the Black vote when you compare her numbers to Hillary Clinton, Joe Biden. And of course, nobody has the numbers that Barack Obama has. Significant amount of Black Americans are tired, Cenk. They're tired. And one of the things that has been discussed multiple times on this show is that Black Americans want to know why we are the base of the Democratic Party. They can't win without us. But these candidates don't even support reparations for American descendants of slavery. They are putting every other group before Black Americans. And I really do, from what I heard from the people, I believe that's why a lot of people stayed home, because they're tired. You look at the rallies, the handoff rally that were the anti-Trump rallies that happened all across the country. Not many Black people out there. Like, people are tired. And so what do you say to those people? Because it's just, so much time has gone by, and I can't say, well, they're wrong for saying that no reparations, no vote. I honestly can't say that, because it's well overdue. And some of them want something different. They want a new party that is going to answer to the issues that the Black community is having to deal with. This oligarchy tour right now that AOC and Bernie Sanders are doing, they're not even going to Black communities, Cenk. Why aren't they in Flint, Michigan, Detroit, Baltimore, Jackson, Mississippi? Who are they talking to? And I just continue to see the same pattern like repeat itself. So I'm curious, like your take about that. Do you feel that's something the Democratic Party is not the best on?
So look, we could agree or disagree on some of the specific issues, and should they campaign on them? Should they not campaign on them? Should they agree with that? Should they not agree with that? But I think the overall point is that Blacks, Latinos, and a lot of our coalition is splintering, disintegrating, etc., because we haven't delivered for them. You could say we didn't deliver for them on reparations. I'm not sure that that's the main driving force, but that's a viable reason why. I think probably a bigger reason why is we didn't deliver for them on wages, we didn't deliver on healthcare, we didn't deliver on jobs, we didn't deliver on so many of the things that we promised them, right? So at some point they go, yeah, but like a great example is we said that if we win those two Georgia seats, Ossoff and Warnock, that we were going to do voting rights, right? And the Voting Rights Act was H.R. 1. That was the most important priority for the House. And I said on the Young Turks, they're not going to do it, guys. They're in that bill is like ending gerrymandering. All of their districts are gerrymandered. They love gerrymandering. That's what got them into power, right? And then Clyburn famously gerrymandered South Carolina to help Republicans have an extra seat just so he can keep his seat, right? And super safe. Clyburn is one of the worst corporate Democrats in the country. Can't stand that guy, right? So we've got to actually deliver for these voters. If we don't deliver for them, of course the coalition is going to disintegrate. And who doesn't deliver for them? It's not Bernie and AOC. They're trying their best. And I have my own critique of them, as you do, right? And our critiques might be similar in some ways and different in other ways. But they're at least trying, right? Whereas they're not the problem. They're not the blocking agent. The people that are blocking that change is all the corporate candidates. So, for example, $15 minimum wage. So Biden says we're going to do it. It's easy. It's one of his first priorities. He gets into office. The very first thing he pulls out of the first bill is $15 minimum wage. And so Bernie introduces an amendment, and 8 corporate Democrats voted against it. So why did they vote against higher wages for all those groups? And does that disproportionately affect Blacks and Latinos in this country? Yes, definitely. And that is a material impact in their lives. Do I have more food on the table for my family or don't I? So when those corporate Democrats betray us, that's when the Bernies of the world have to call them out and use their spotlight, use their microphone. To me, that's one of my strategic disagreements with Bernie, which is that he doesn't. He says generally oligarchy. Generally, Democrats have an issue too, right? But name Chris Coons, say Chris Coons. Nope, won't ever do it. Say Joe Biden, won't do it. Say Hillary Clinton, won't do it, right? So you see how we're trying to attack the same problem just from a slightly different angle.
I get that, but I don't know. I try to look at the bigger picture, and when I talk about a movement, I'm not just looking at like electoral politics, right? So it's not just third party. It's organizing. It's all these other pieces to the puzzle that I feel sometimes are overlooked. A lot of these progressive policies have passed on a local level. You live in California. California is a ballot initiative state. So like my state, Massachusetts, ballot initiative, we've passed progressive policies locally, right? But this is why it frustrates me when so many people stay home. They're not even going to vote for that. They're not voting for those ballot measures that will directly impact them in their state. So that's one thing, ballot initiatives. Mutual aid. I do mutual aid. I wish more people were donating money to mutual aid organizations instead of to political candidates. Like we're spending millions of dollars on presidential candidates and we're not taking that money and putting it into communities. We could have built clinics. We could have done so much more for, I think, a lot of the lower income communities. And then there's the protest, right? A couple years ago, we had marches for Medicare for all in the U.S. in over 50 cities in the U.S. And I got to tell you, even back then, it was frustrating because a lot of the large left media wouldn't even allow the organizers to come on to promote it. I didn't understand because Biden was president. I don't know, but I thought we all agreed on Medicare for all. That's another thing. So we need people like you. We need people like you guys are way bigger than us. Okay. So we need people like you. We need people like even like Majority Report, all these people. When these actions take place, we need those channels to promote it. Now, those marches were great, but we could have had more people. And then some people said they didn't know. Cori Bush was the only squad member who came to the March for Medicare for All. She was the only one. All of them were contacted. So they can't just fight when Republicans are in power. They also have to fight when Democrats are in power too. So I want to get your perspective there about organizing, because I feel like I keep hearing people say we have to organize. We did. We organized the marches for Medicare for all. We organized, obviously, the pro-Palestinian protests, which are still happening. And I know you're not a fan of this one, but also Force the Vote. We've been organizing for 10 years, but it's the politicians that are not showing up.
Yeah. Look, Force the Vote was just off by a little bit. It just jumped the gun. It was strategic. I disagreed with it strategically, but not in terms of its goals, right? So, in the same with the marches, I love the marches. I love the goals. I want to take those goals and strategies and turn them into practical wins, so we could actually get these policies that we've been fighting for decade after decade, right? So, look, you say you're small and we're big, and I hear you, but I'm here and I'm doing this because we need the small, the big, the far left and the middle left and the independents, and we need all of it to pass Medicare for all. That is going to be extremely difficult, and we've got to build a very large coalition to do that. So what I want people to do is like support, like your show doesn't agree with my show on a couple of different things that we discuss here. So what? People should subscribe to your show. People should subscribe to the Young Turks. They should subscribe to all these shows and listen to these shows. And and hold them accountable on things like this. So what have the Young Turks done over the last 20 years, right? We're the oldest show in internet history. We're the first YouTubers. And so we built this platform where we featured hundreds of progressive candidates, hundreds of progressive organizations. And then we created dozens and dozens, it might be up to 100 now, of progressive hosts that have gone on to do different things. And so, I mean, if anyone is in favor of building a movement and a strategy to win on these things, it's us at the Young Turks. And so a spectacular example was the Just Democrats. So I was one of the co-founders. We launched it on the Young Turks. Ro Khanna came on and said, yes, as an incumbent, I'll join the group, which was amazing. He did that on the Young Turks. And then we featured this little-known candidate, in fact, not known at all, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. We put her in 34 videos and got her over 1 million views. We raised $2.5 million for Justice Democrats in that first cycle. And that led to these miraculous victories. It's not the only thing that led to it at all, but at least helped, right? And our audience would, I keep saying they're open-minded and open-hearted, and this is what I'm talking about. To give that amount of money to these folks, and the result was that AOC victory was one of the most stunning political upsets in American history, literally, right? And so we all did that together. Now, you've got some frustrations with the squad and the Just Democrats, and so do I. So that, parted ways with that organization. But I don't hate them. I let them keep going. Let them do what they do, and hopefully they'll join up in the right place with us. And I wish that they had challenged the corporate Democrats more. And that's what we set up the organization to do. And by the way, Sabby, very soon, I'm going to launch a new effort. And that effort is going to be a similar theme, which is, in this case, we're calling it a populist takeover of the Democratic Party, so that they finally do all the things that we're talking about here. Deliver for the average person, higher wages, better health care, end the wars, get money out of politics. So probably my biggest frustration with the Just Democrats in the past was the number one issue is corruption, money in politics. You all should have focused on that like a laser beam. Instead, they didn't focus on it at all. Why? Because it would offend their beloved colleagues. So this new group is going to have an attitude of, no, we're doing a takeover. And yes, that will offend some of your colleagues. We've got to win the Democratic Party back to what it's supposed to be, serving the average person.
So this is similar to Justice Democrats.
Yeah, this will be a new effort similar to Justice Democrats. But this time, I think the country, the Democratic Party is ready for it. So last time we won some spectacular victories, but we couldn't take over the whole party with Bernie or any other of our, side progressive candidates winning. But this time, I think a progressive populist candidate can win the 2028 primary. But what we got to show you, like we did last time, is can we get electoral victories in 2026? Can we win in red districts, purple districts, blue districts? Can we win everywhere? And that gives you the leverage to be able to win at the presidential level and take over the party and bring it back to the party of FDR.
So this is the type of candidate that I'm looking for. My producer launched 11 demands for real democracy, fix big money in politics and government, healthcare for all, a minimum standard of living for everyone, end the wars, respond to the climate emergency, racial and criminal justice reform that also includes reparations for ADOS, reject censorship, immigration reform, an election system we can trust, which includes ranked choice voting, revamp taxation and funding, and last but not least, democratize the enterprise. This is something I think, like when I talk about building a movement, I just don't want people to feel like their only option is electoral politics, right? And I know the majority of Americans don't vote, and people are just like, I'm done with all of this. What do I do? I feel like it has to be fought on two different fronts, right? Like I feel like some people are going to feel like their fight is going to the ballot box, but we got to give something to those other people who feel like that ship has sailed and they want something else to do. And I feel like that's where the movement on the outside comes in. But when we have those movements, these politicians, like the squad members, when we contact their offices, as we did before in the past, they got to participate. Like it just like these things will be elevated, enormously. Like the pro-Palestinian marches, all of them should have been out there. Like this was a no-brainer to me. I don't understand. Medicare for all, they all should have been out there. Like it can't just always be Bernie Sanders. Just like I said, for the Green Party, it can't always be Jill Stein. And now you see Butch Ware is kind of, taking up those reins there. But I think this has been like a interesting conversation. But I think we both agree that something does need to change. I think we just may have disagreements about how we need to go about it.
And by the way, that's beautiful. There's nothing wrong with that, right? So what I say to folks who disagree with us is great, wonderful, build something, right? And that's the point you're making. Build a movement, and whether it's electoral or non-electoral, set up something that you love and rally people around that cause. And one of us is going to have the right idea and is going to be able to build a winning coalition. And that's what we need. We need all of us to be fighting really hard. So as I look at that list, it looks pretty good. I mean, obviously you ran right through it, right? And I didn't get a chance to look at all the specifics. But whether I agree or disagree with every single thing on that list is not important, to me at least. And I hope it's not important to you. Like, generally, you got to be along those lines, but do not eliminate people because they didn't agree with 3 things on a list of like 40 things, policy priorities, right? That's what I would ask of people. So we could build that coalition. Otherwise, we're going to have tiny, tiny coalitions of people who agree 100% on everything. That's just too small, right? We need to broaden it, etc. But broadening it doesn't mean, we brought it to the point where they don't do anything. No. The point is to actually pass the bills, because that's the only thing that affects your lives, right? You're the voters' lives, the viewers' lives, etc. So that's what we're trying to build. And look, your frustration about those politicians, I'll leave you with this. There's a virus in the air in Washington. Okay, it's a mind virus. And once they get in there, they really, they get so offended when I say this, but I got to say it. I got to be honest. They then begin to feel subconsciously, not consciously. They're good people, but they start to feel what's in the air, which is we're the elites. And the elites don't talk to non-elites. Why would they talk to someone organizing a Medicare for All rally? Why would they talk to Sabby? Why would they even talk to us? They don't even talk to us. Our network is freaking gigantic, right? It's that Media Matters chart came out. We're about 1/3 of the entire left-wing online media, right? TYT as a network. And they won't deign to come on our show because we've disagreed with them strategically from time to time. Well, I mean, I apply the same standard to them that I do to my friends in the radical left. Somebody's got to be able to disagree with you 5 to 10%, and you still come on their show, for God's sake, right? You still have the same policies and stuff, but they get to Washington and they forget about the rest of us, and it's super frustrating. And so I share that frustration with you. But hey, as Bernie says, the struggle continues. So we all go, well, let's all fight in the right direction, and please, for God's sake, fight towards our shared goals, right? But if you don't want to, and you just want to attack Sabby or me or some other guy on the left or person, well, what am I going to do? It's a free country. So, but if you can, subscribe to Sabby, subscribe to the Young Turks, watch us whenever our VODs, our live shows, 6 o'clock, etc., and keep the conversation going, also within the left.
Cenk Uygur, thank you so much.
Really appreciate you.
Hey guys, this was a Sabby clip. If you like what you saw, hit that like button and subscribe.